Welcome CSE 121 W1 to exercise 5B. This is still 5 test scores, but this will be 5B, and this will be using a while loop. And the reason we're going to use a while loop in this scenario is so that we could stop it. It doesn't have a set amount. We can stop it when we want, but we have to use a conditional statement so that we can indicate that it's going to stop, so that we could break it only in a certain situation. So what we're going to do here is fork this again. So I'm going to fork this again. Use the 3 dots, fork it, and I'll call it B, and I'll call it while loop. Or you could just put W loop if you don't want to have to type while in there. So I'll put W loop in here, and I'll fork it, because most of the code is going to stay the same. And I'll close this up over here, because I don't need to look at my files. But what we'll do, instead of this for statement, we're going to use a while statement. And again, check out the videos in here about using a while loop. And they're from my Home Studio YouTube channel, not from the Warren YouTube channel, but it's still me. So what we're going to do in here is create a infinite loop. Now you got to be careful with them because sometimes they could lock things up. But we're going to go in here and put while, and I'm going to put true with a capital T. It has to be a capital T. So while true creates an infinite loop. Now if we ran this right now, this would just keep going. We'd have to stop it. Now it wouldn't give us any opportunity to stop, but it would keep adding up and it would keep doing things as we go. So that's fine, except we don't have a way to stop it. So let's just try it. And I'll just do like 3 times. 10, 9, 10, 8, 10, 7, and it'll just keep going. It'll never give me a chance to stop it until we put some code in here to stop it. Let me stop this, and I could trash it over here. So I think I trashed it already. So we'll rerun it again. So it's still there. I don't know, if you ever have a problem, just X out of it, and then go here and go down to console and just open it up again. It's also an easy way to do that. And I'll move this over here. I don't really need the shell right now, so that's a good way to wipe it out too. All right, so we're going to do a while true here, but then we need to stop it. So we want to stop it with some kind of code word so that we can enter something, and maybe we could just say stop. And we could just do it with the possible points. We don't have to do it after the earn. So we'll just say, like, when the next one comes up, we'll do something in here that says we can enter stop. So I'll go here and I'll put if, and it's going to be PP. So we'll use PP. I'll say if PP equals, and I'll put a string, stop. And then I have to use a colon. That's why I have a little red dot there. I need a colon. Then I'll hit enter, and what's going to happen when we stop? We're going to run a break, which will stop, take us out of the loop. So we'll do a break here. And otherwise, it should keep going. So let me just, before I put an else in there, let me just leave that alone for now. So we're going to break it if we put in stop. If not, it'll just keep going. So let's see what happens here. And I'll put in 10, 9, and now I want to stop. So I'm going to put in stop. And I get an error. And why do I get an error? Value error. Invalid literal for int. Okay, so even if you don't know what this means, if you look at your code, we're converting our input to an int because we're using numbers. But all of a sudden, now I'm putting in stop. Now you could put a number and say put in 0 or something, and maybe that would stop it. You could get away with that. But it makes more sense to put in something meaningful like stop or end or something like that. So what could you do here? If PP equals stop, now you could try and convert it back to a string. Let's see if we could do that. Let's see if PP equals stop, then PP equals string PP. Let's see if that works. Let's see if doing a conversion of PP will work. But we still might have an issue here because it's still comparing it. So it might still compare this to that and give us an error. So let's just see if that works. So let's do 10. Let's do 9. and let's do stop. And we still get an error because it's not stopping it ahead of time. So we're having a problem here by doing that. So what we could do is just not do it as an int here. I'll take out the int. And that means it'll be a string. So here's where we can throw in an else. Instead of converting it here, which isn't working because it's converting after the fact, we're going to take it as a string and get rid of this. Make sure we have get rid of this. Make sure now it's just a regular input that would take a string. Now we're still going to put numbers in here, but if our string that we put in is stop, then it's going to break and it'll work. Else, what do you think we're going to do for the else? So I'm going to do else. And look at that, you hit enter and it moves back. That's nice. So we're going to do an else here. Now we don't have to put a condition, but we have to put what's going to happen, the result of else. So what's going to happen here? Well, we could put pp, just like we were going to do before, equals int pp. And that way we're converting pp back to an integer. It never is an integer, but we're converting it to an integer, and then it's going to keep moving along. Then it's going to allow us to do ep and so on. So let's see if that works. So now, basically, just to go through it again, we have an infinite loop, and we take a string input, and if our string we put in is stop, only stop, it's going to break it. Anything else, it's going to keep going. And if it keeps going, it's going to convert anything else to a integer. So even if you put a word in, it'll try to convert it to an integer. So, you know, there's issues here. It's not going to be perfect, but if we put in numbers, it should move along. So let's see what happens. Let's try it out. Okay, so we're going to start off with 10, and we'll go to 9, and I'm going to say stop. So let's see how this works. I'm putting in stop. So what should happen by putting in stop? It should break it. It shouldn't even do anything else. And once it breaks out of the loop, it should still go to line 20 and print out the score, which should be 9 out of 10, and it should be a 90. Let's see if this works. You earned 90% for 2 assignments. Now, it's almost right, except it says 2 assignments, because we still have the issue where that's working, but even though it's breaking, it still looks like it's still giving us the wrong assignment. So somehow even though it broke there, it's still putting assignment, it's counting this. I guess here's the situation. We still went through a second time. So we still went through the second time before hitting stop. So this was the first time, this was the second time. So the second time, it did increment this to 2. So that's why that's 2. So what could you do with that? Well, you could go down here and do that -1 thing. Or if you knew that was going to happen, you could say, well, if you break it, we actually want to send it back once because we don't want to count it. So you could almost say, I don't want to count the one we just did. So you could do this. And this kind of is a little more, I guess, mature than just subtracting something down here. You could say, hey, if we're going to break it, then let's make sure that we don't count up the final assignment. So we're going to go assignment equals assignment -1. Now remember, we can do that we could do this. We did the shortcut before, minus equals 1. That's another way to do that. So we can just kind of decrement itself or go down. So we're just going to take away 1. Remember, you don't put equals because then it would just be equal to -1. So you want to put minus equals 1. That means it's going to be itself -1. And I think you could sometimes just do minus, but we'll get into that later. This is kind of following our flow of what we're doing. So if it breaks, if it's going to go to a break, and obviously we're going to break it because it's part of the if you put in stop. If you put in stop, it's not going to take the last assignment, it's going to subtract it. So let's see if this works. And we're going to do 10, and then 9, and let's do one more. Let's do 10, and do 8, and we'll do one more, and I'll say I'm going to stop. Now if we stop here, what it'll do, it should be an 85 because we have 9 and 8, and it should take that in half and get the average. It should be an 85%. So if we put stop here, and hopefully it'll now use that -1 to give us the correct number of assignments. you earned an 85 for 2 assignments. So that's working. So this is pretty good. This is a for loop and a while loop. That didn't take that long because we already did all the code, but now it made it a lot easier. We have 2 methods. We could use the for loop to do it as many times as we put in the range, or we could do a while loop and stop it whenever we want. Now there's different ways to stop it. You could even make a variable that is equal to true and stop it and do something like that. But while true seems to be working okay. So this seems to be working. So I think we're going to stop here, and what we're going to continue on with after this for exercise 6, which makes sense, is we're going to use more conditional statements, and then we're going to put in a letter grade so that if you get an 85, that'll be a B. If you get a 90, that'll be an A. So that's going to be a whole number of conditional statements, and we started working with them already, and they're not that hard, but this will give us a chance to work with them a little bit more.